Hi, everybody. We're making our first review of the best and most important releases of BigQuery and Data Studio. Here in the call, it's Alex and Thomas and Ricardo. And we're going to be talking to you.
Hello.
Yeah, we've been working with BigQuery and Data Studio a lot this year, and also following the new releases that were coming monthly. And Alex was writing blog posts about highlighting the most relevant things that were happening there for both tools. And we decided it would make sense to also make a year review covering, out of all those most important things of each month, the ones that were the most important for 2021. So if you've been using BigQuery and Data Studio and you haven't been able to be up to date with all the new releases, this is a great video to start. So maybe Alex, you can walk us a bit through the first BigQuery updates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so maybe at first to quickly say, as already Ricardo mentioned, so we're writing now since April this month, our monthly Data Studio and BigQuery and also GA4 and GTM updates. But now we are concentrating on BigQuery and Data Studio. Yeah, and I quickly checked the ones we already chosen in the Medium blog post and also the one before, so before April. To start with BigQuery. So BigQuery, the first one was, and it was a really annoying thing, that when you created a cluster table, or let's say mostly it was the other way around, that you started with an unclustered table, and then maybe the structure changed a little bit, or just the amount of data you have in it. And then you said, okay, maybe it would make sense to cluster it. But then before the new feature, it was needed to delete the table and create a new one, best with the same name. But now you can quickly just change it, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think whenever you work with like bigger tables for companies, then also keeping the table and not renewing it is quite an important thing, right? Because you have, first of all, a history of the table. Yep. You see when this table was created and so on. So sometimes it's maybe not that important, but sometimes it's also quite good to see that this table also exists since a while, and also have then other things on top, like getting back in time and so on. We will talk about that this is also a new feature. And then it's, of course, very good that you don't need to renew the table and recreate the table, but can simply change the settings for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what I also realized sometimes, because it's also a permission thing. So because sometimes you don't have the permission to delete tables, but you have the permission to change them or to add new tables. And then I sometimes needed to upgrade a table to a cluster table, but I can't do it because I don't have the permission to delete a table. And then I have to ask somebody and so on. And so
it's a very interesting thing. I didn't think about that, to be honest. Yeah. So whoever of you already set up permissions in GCP or like BigQuery directly, you know what kind of a pain sometimes it is to get everyone or give everyone the right permissions and the right like credentials. This is one of those things where that makes a big difference, because you normally don't want to give everyone the permission to delete tables, which is obviously the, like, let's say, most critical thing you can do inside a data warehouse, like delete tables. And then it makes a big difference if it's only like an alter process.
Yeah. Just to quickly mention it again. So these are the features we say are important for us. Because BigQuery has a lot of new features and so on, in Data Studio also, but we chosen here the most important one for us. And one other thing is, I also, sometimes you heard it in other conversations and so on, that they want to create pivot tables. So not just in the visualization, what you can mostly do, I think, in most of the tools, for example, Data Studio for sure, but also to create it in BigQuery directly. And I also had it one time that I need to change, let's say, the date dimension to a column and so on, so that it's not in a row, that's in a column. And that's really easy. There are some things, you can check it in the blog post from us. BigQuery can improve, but yeah, it's a good starting point.
Yeah. I think it was possible before, but it was super messy to create that kind of query, and you needed to have some experience already in writing SQL query to get that thing done. There was a very good, like, let's say, solution in Stack Overflow. But now it's even easier to create pivot tables. And sometimes you get some raw data from a table, and you need to basically take those dimensional values or attribute values and basically move them to columns. Date could also be an issue, but normally you don't want to have date like
it could be that a month or year or something.
Exactly. But for attribute values, for example, in an operational table, you normally have the issue that you have normalized data, and then you have, let's say, certain attributes normalized as values inside this table, and in the other like column, you have the values for that. And inside your data warehouse table, you would like to have them as columns. And then this feature makes pretty much sense that you take those values, like pivot it as a single operation, and left join it to the other basically table where all the other like columns are inside. And just move them together, and now it's getting, due to that, way easier.
So hopefully BigQuery will increase that or improve it a little bit, but it's already good status of that.
Third thing, my most important one.
I think it's the biggest one. So for us, I would say in BigQuery, it's table snapshots. So table snapshots means that you can travel in time in the 7 days ago maximum for now.
I like already the term traveling in time, right?
I'm not sure if Google did this phrase, or if there's also, is it a common database thing to say that?
I don't know. I cannot tell you. But I think it's a common thing to say, traveling in time. And I think Snowflake, for example, has that feature already. I'm not quite sure if it was there since the beginning, but there's definitely this feature is already there since some time. And now it's pretty cool that you also have this in Data Studio, BigQuery, of course. For me, for example,
so quickly explain exactly
maybe explain it.
So you can travel in time in 7 days for every table. So what does it mean? For example, let's say you did a change of a structure of the table, or there comes new data inside, or whatever.
Which was not that smart.
Exactly. For, let's say, 3 hours ago, and now you realize, shit, there was a mistake or something, and you want to have the old data with the old table with the old data and the old structure. Then you can create a snapshot inside the editor, or there's also a new icon in the UI where you can do it in the front end. And then you say, okay, I want this data of this table from 4 hours ago, for example. And then you create a snapshot, and with that snapshot, you can also create then a copy or a new real table. You can use as a normal table.
How was that processing looking before? You made a backup table of every table you were touching. This usually created a whole mess in your database. If you were not that, let's say, strict to quickly delete it afterwards, or to immediately delete it afterwards, what you normally are not doing, because then you think, maybe I need it tomorrow or the day after, or I lose any data with that. And then you had version 1, 2, 3, 4. If you're a little bit smarter, like have at least a date connected to that you have any idea how old that table is. But there were a lot of duplicated, at least we see that in our projects, that happened a lot. With table snapshots, you don't need to do it. We find ourselves sometimes that we're still doing it because it's the way we did it since years, but it's not needed anymore, because you can always go back in time and select the data version or the version of the table you would like to go back to.
Just if you need the table of the data from 8 days ago, then
then it's maybe too late.
But just to mention it. Also, if the table is already deleted, you can also do it. So that's also, I think, an important topic if you deleted a table, which we already mentioned. But you don't want to do it. So then,
but of course, also to just say that it's also a very good feature in terms of backing up the whole system, right? You know that BigQuery basically always have a backup of your data, so you cannot lose data at the end, and you don't need to actively do that. But now You're even more flexible when it comes to get back to a point also as a database administrator. Maybe not like the one person like who's doing changes and realizes, okay, there was something, but maybe also as a database administrator where you have the need to go back to a certain version. That's now way easier.
Yeah. So then just quickly to mention, because I think I never used it just in terms of preparation of the blog post and so on. I think you also not. So there's a new data type in BigQuery, interval. Yeah, so just quickly to say, it's something like a duration where you can say, okay, one process takes this duration until its end, for example, and then you can put it in an interval data type. You can have some more transformations with that, some more calculations advanced transformations as you have with a normal integer. But yeah, I think
it's same like pivot tables, right? It was kind of there before as a workaround because you normally did milliseconds, microseconds, I don't know, Unix timestamp, whatever worked. And now you have basically no data type for that you can use. It makes it a little bit more easy, a little bit more flexible. Yeah.
Then we have create table like and create table copy. So with that we mean to create copies of tables. So normally you have in the UI, you have the color, the button you can select, and then you create a copy of the table. But what you can also do is you can type in create table like, maybe I show in the video a quick example, or you go in our blog post and there you see it. There's one difference between them. Hopefully I am right that create table like is the structure, so the metadata of all of the tables and the data, and create table copy, I think is just the metadata and not the structure and not the content, but maybe it's vice versa.
So if I see the names, I would say it's vice versa.
Yeah, could be. So I will check
it. After editing, we will we will not cut it out, but we will basically show the winner like down here. So I would say it's if you make table like, it's a schema.
Could be, yeah.
If you make table copy, it's including the data. At least would make more sense to me.
Could be.
So if you're watching the video right now, you can write to see which one you think is the correct one, and we'll reveal the winner in 10 seconds.
Very good. Very good. Try that. We'll put it in the comment. We'll wait for 10 seconds.
But I think especially this thing just to copy the metadata of the table, to have the structure.
This is super good. I think we wrote a script for that. At least I did that somewhere to basically, how did I do that? I went to the table schema. I copied the whole thing. I was putting it inside the editor, and then the editor basically did some like magic and gave me the correct table schema to use it again. Maybe in the meantime, there was also another solution.
I know one other solution, but then I read in a Slack forum. So you can do select star, so create or place table for sure. Yeah. Then select star from, and then the table.
Yeah.
And then where one equals 2.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, but I just listened to that.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so whoever sees that and like wrote that into the Slack group, very good. Good. So, but when does that matter, right? Of course, it was a huge issue with cost. So imagine you have a table which is multiple terabytes big, right? And you make select star from something where blah blah blah. You still are querying the full size of the table, right? So if this table has, let's say, 50 terabytes, then let's say that was getting a little bit more expensive, like $250, I would say. So roughly. And so now with table, create table copy, create table like, hopefully they're not charging the whole thing. I don't think so, right? At least I didn't check that. But I think it's like inserting data because you don't read the full data, and I think you at least don't getting charged for.
Good question. I'm also not sure. Then we have an interesting topic, but it's currently in a status that I would say, okay, it's cool that it's there, but it's not so really well supported. It's the SQL translator. So BigQuery uses standard SQL as their SQL dialect. And now it's possible to translate Teradata SQL, I think. I never heard of that before. You get the opportunity to put in your Teradata SQL query And then you get on the right side, on the other side, on the front end, you get the equal BigQuery standard SQL query. Vice versa, it's not possible?
Yeah, because
for sure.
Why should BigQuery do that? That makes no sense. Yeah, but I think it makes the whole migration transition way easier.
Yeah.
Right? And this is, of course, what also Google wants.
You can also put in SQL files, so Teradata SQL files in cloud storage, for example, and then you can migrate it to so then there's a service or transfer you can choose, and then not sure if you get a new file or if just open it in the front end, not sure. You can check it in the blog post. I think there I pushed it there, but it's also possible to translate files with Teradata.
Smart move, with the SQL translator, because it makes the whole migration like barrier way like smaller or lower.
But it would be cool if they also support in the next weeks, months, years, other dialects, Amazon and Azure and so on, as we already mentioned.
Could be. Would be
cool. So that's it for BigQuery, I would say. If you are not missing anything, but I think table snapshots was the fun one for you.
As usual, you can communicate with us, right? So write us in the comments when you have some other like cool stuff which was coming up during this year, like 2021. And maybe if it's super like interesting and we missed something, we will add that to one of our next videos. But we can also discuss it, of course, in the comment section. Would be helpful.
So then Data Studio. Ricardo, now you can also...
Yeah, let's go to the Data Studio section. So although there were a lot of big important changes in BigQuery this year, I think Data Studio had a lot of movement going on. It's a platform that I think is developing a lot. And we saw that many things that we were doing almost like hacks now started becoming official features in the platform. So yeah, let's start with it. So Alex, data source editors can now edit the connection, refresh fields, update credentials. Why is that important?
I think the year started good in terms of Data Studio releases. I think we made a big party when we saw that. So quickly to explain what does the feature do, quickly do a quick reminder. You have permissions for the report and you have permissions for the data source. And the problem was, so for example, you add 2 new columns to the BigQuery table, then you need to refresh the fields inside the Data Studio data source because then they are also showing there. And that was not possible for the editor. It was just possible for the owner. So just for one person, or let's say for one account.
Basically the guy who created, Falk who created the data source itself, right?
Yeah, and then they changed it. So now everybody who has editor rights to the data source can change that. For sure, not the viewer rights. So people who can just watch to the structure of the data source. It's not possible, but that's correct. But now it can do also editors. That's good.
Yeah, that was really critical. And we are super lucky that this now works. You can still don't transfer to another organization the stuff, right?
Yeah.
Google, if you watch that, right, a big issue is that when you work with clients and you create a dashboard or a report, at a certain point you would like to transfer the ownership to another organization, to another domain, which is not possible. At least we know no way that this is like going to happen. A good workaround for the moment is, of course, to have, let's say, email address of the domain, of the other domain from the beginning, create the table or the report there. But then, of course, you need to have access to that email address. Otherwise, you cannot do certain steps which might be important. And this is a big issue, of course, in terms of like data privacy. So you have then an email address where normally 1, 2, 3 people have access to, which you don't want at the end. So please change that, because I think we're not the only one who need that feature quite quick.
I think the next one, Alex, you meant it more in an aesthetic part, so that labels can have compact numbers now. Is that so to keep the report clean and not too saturated?
Yeah, it's just a little visualization improvement, I would say. So, for example, for time charts, I think or bar charts, there was the most difficult or complicated one. So if you are say, okay, I want for every important point, I want the precise link data, then you can show it. But then if it was too much points, they were overlapping over each other and so on. And if you have 1 million, I don't know, an integer of 1 million, yeah, then it needs a lot of space. And now there's just a 1 and an M or something. So that's, just
how quick you have a revenue over 1 million euro, right?
Exactly.
And this is for bigger companies in every chart, at least. And so this is not that small, the change, I would say, because that's quite needed. There are sometimes a lot of those small things which are really relevant if you build like bigger like dashboards.
So then we have two new conditional functions, or let's say the two most important one, I would say it's COALESCE and it's IF. But as we mentioned already, for example, for the interval data type in BigQuery and so on, it's more a nice to have feature, because also COALESCE and IF you can do with case when in Data Studio. But now it's also possible to write it with a COALESCE or an IF. So maybe to quickly explain COALESCE. So you can give a list of values in it, and the first value, which is not null, is selected or is chosen for this value. So then we have one important thing. We have publishing. Maybe Ricardo, you can say something, because I think there you also played a little bit wrong with that.
Yeah, this was a good one. No? So often a dashboard or report was already live, so to say. People were using this dashboard, but as we all know, adjustments and improvements are constantly being made. So the workaround that we were doing was creating a duplicate of the page, working on this one, and when it was ready, replacing the former page that was done. No? But Data Studio a couple of months ago released this new version that is possible to work in draft mode. So there's a live version of the dashboard that the people with view access to the dashboard, that's the only thing that they see. But editors can see the edit mode of the dashboard, where you can see the draft pages, make all the changes, see it live, how it would play in that without the viewer access people seeing these changes. And when you're ready, just click publish changes and automatically it's all replaced. And I think for the workflow and the ease of use and making sure that everything was on point, I think made life of many Data Studio users way easier.
Especially when you're working for a customer or something and you want to try out something, then they see the changes and so on. Then you maybe make a test dashboard or a test page or something where you can try out stuff. And then they ask, what is that for page and so on. So that was a little bit annoying. I think
you still cannot duplicate the whole dashboards for one single page, right? Imagine you have like 20 pages inside a report and you just would like to create a new report with that one page. That's not possible.
I think not, right? Or we can't do now.
I think you can copy elements. If you have a blank dashboard with the same data sources as a dashboard that is populated, I think you can copy elements and it detects that it's the same data sources and might work. But it's a bit not. I wouldn't recommend it as a standard process, but you can.
No, it's no way better. I think we can also jump over the next change on our list and take the one right after, because it's very connected to that.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So it's like, as you know, from GitHub or something, now you can say, okay, I create a new version, and then you publish it, and then, this version is created. You can also give it a name, for example. So you can say, okay, here I changed, and then you can give the 3 most important things or something. So, and then you have a list, and then you can also go back to the different stages of this. So that's also a big improvement in terms of, to try out stuff and to see the versioning of this.
Is it stored somewhere? The version controlling, or just inside?
No, just inside. So you click then on version controlling or something it was called. And then you see on the right who did the change and the name of the change and when it was made.
So that we can connect it to Git, then we will probably present next year.
Maybe yes.
Maybe yes.
But did you use versioning a lot of, Ricardo?
Actually, not that much. Only I use it if I'm the editor of a dashboard, but also other people are, especially from other teams, but especially if they're from other teams, which means that then I need to check back. If I see that big changes were made, I can just revert back and be like, okay, maybe I want to see how I left the dashboard on the last point.
Then we have also a quick thing, especially for the viewers or for the analysts of the dashboard. So the reset all filter button. So now on the top right of your dashboard, you have a reset all button, which you can select for sure just if you had some filters on it. and then all filters on the page you did were resetted. So that's also really good because sometimes you do not know which filters I selected and which values I put there and so on. And then, you don't have to go to every filter.
No real good workaround for that beforehand, right? You could not really reload the page. I think we once tried to implement a button which is just redirecting to the same page again, but it was cached. So it was not working. So there was no real good workaround for exactly that case. So now with the reset all filter, which was a big disadvantage before, a lot of also viewers, customers, and so on mentioned, and this is now fixed.
So then we have the presentation mode. The presentation mode is especially interesting, I would say, if you have, for example, your dashboard on a big screen, I don't know, in the entrance of your company or something, and you just show there a big dashboard. Then you can put it in a presentation mode. And then, for example, you can say every minute there are some intervals you can choose. Let's say 1 minute, for example, it should show again, or it should show the next page, for example. And also it's kind of a embedded mode and so on. So it's really good. But when you really try out the report and you do some filtering and so on, then I think it's not so interesting.
Beforehand, we needed a Raspberry Pi with small tool on it, which is like cycling through the pages. Now that's not needed anymore, which makes it so. Can you basically enter that presentation mode with the URL directly?
Or do you need to click think something? So. No, I don't think. I think you have to click on these 3 buttons at the top.
Yeah.
And then there you have the refresh data button and this presentation, I think.
Okay.
I think that's not so special.
Again, small hint to Google, if you see that. We need something like datastudio.google.com/embed/ we need / if that's now not the case. So we will check that. We will check that. If that's not the case, we need that. Otherwise, very good job. So if the screen is basically rebooting, and you always need to connect basically your keyboard, toggle there, click there, which is not that good in terms of optimization.
New location. So the refresh data button, because it wasn't before, it was just at the top pane, and now it's under the 3 dots.
This is not a good solution, I would say.
Yeah, I don't know why they did it. Because now you have to click 2 buttons before you refresh the fields. Before it was just 1 button.
Is small application still working?
Yeah.
Which is
okay, good. That we checked some minutes after we saw it.
So maybe you, in case you don't know, there's a small Chrome extension which is basically triggering that button every second, minute, whatever you basically type in there. I think also before it was toggling or cycling through the dashboards, which is now due to presentation mode not needed anymore. But also this was done by that small application, which is really great because if you have a customer who would like to have clean and fresh data every minute or every 5 minutes, okay, maybe now you could argue Data Studio is not the right tool for that. But if you use Data Studio, you would like to have for that particular dashboard a workaround to do that. Therefore, this application is needed or this extension. This is still working, but I don't know why they did it under the hamburger or the 3-dot menu. No idea.
My best idea is to keep it in a certain way inaccessible from people who only have view rights, so that if you want people not to be pressing many buttons, just putting under another layer. I think the type of users that we have, we actually encourage the users of the dashboard to really play around with the stuff and be hands-on instead of asking to refresh stuff on our side. But maybe not the same case for other people.
Yeah, so then we have the page navigation location. So here we have to separate between 2 things. The first new feature which came was that you can now show also the navigation just on the top with some tabs you can click on. Then you have the left menu where you can say, okay, I want it in the page or I don't want it. So you can expand it or put it back. Or you can say, okay, I want to show it every time on the left side. And it's also possible to hide it. And then you need for sure your own navigation inside your report. But yeah, so if you don't offer that, your own navigation, you need to choose one of the three layouts. Yeah, especially I think we use mostly the left navigation, I would say, if we don't use our own navigation.
Yeah, I mean, this we have to say, we usually use our own navigation. So that means we build our own navigation inside the HTML part of the report. And this gives us, in terms of, I would more say design and functionality, more flexibility. That's basically the main reason. We can insert the logo, like the brand logo of the, in our case, customer, but also our logo to make it a little bit more brand driven for us.
You can also already select filters, pre-select filters.
Exactly. So there are some like advantages. The biggest disadvantage of the external like navigation, which is now more flexible, is that it's still not really flexible and adaptable, right? You cannot change like font types, like font families. You cannot change the size. You cannot like change how it looks. You have a dark mode right now. At least I read somewhere
I think
that you can change the background only to a dark.
I think it's connected to the base style of the dashboard.
Exactly. So
you have a customized one. It's not exactly works, but it works with like light, dark, and I think one or two more. So then the colors change.
Yeah. So then maybe also talk about the other navigation thing. The other one was that they added some new elements to the default navigation. So before it was just possible to add a new page. And now it's also possible to add, for example, a section. Then inside this section, you have something like a bigger topic, and then you can put in there some new pages.
Basically different levels.
Different levels, layers of this navigation. You can also add a header, for example, or you can add just a line.
So divider.
So what I sometimes, for example, do is to put a header and then a line under it so that it's visually a little bit better. You can also add some icons to it so that for example, homepage, then you use a house, for example, as a logo, and so on. There's also some things you can try out. Then we have connect report to GA4. Just quickly to mention, so when you want to see how many people are accessing your dashboard, then you can connect it to, before it was just possible to Universal Analytics. And now with this release, it is also possible to add it to GA4, to a GA4 property. And then you see also in this GA4 property how much people used this dashboard.
Did you try it already?
Yeah.
And how quick is it?
Oh, that I don't know, to be honest. So I know that.
I think I have in my mind that Universal Analytics with Google Analytics was kind of slow.
In terms of getting the data, or what do you mean?
Yeah, with updating it and so on. Okay. But maybe I'm not really sure. But
then I don't know. So then we have a new chart type. Ricardo Gauge.
Okay. So it's like, I think before there was, and there still is, a community visualization for a speedometer, so to say, like what cars used to have. I think now they just show numbers, whatever, but show an increase. And I think it's nice for when people want to see the performance of a specific KPI and how it's growing during a certain time period. Now it's a quick snapshot, not just a number, but also how is it comparing to a certain target or a certain target with.
I think the word target. I think the word target is the most important one here, because when you try to reach a target, then this kind of visualization is still quite nice. Someone who is very analytical driven probably don't like that chart type. It's like pie chart. No one likes pie charts. But yeah, we have a lot of projects where we are using it because the customer wants it at the end. And I think it expresses quite nice where you are, like red, yellow, green, where your target is, maybe between yellow and green or at the beginning of green, and you still see what kind of improvements you can do after the target line. So it's not that the target is always like the 100%. It can be in the middle, and then you have a line inside that chart which expresses what kind of level you want to reach.
This thing with these different colors is just possible in the community visualization.
And
that's, I think, also the biggest pain point in the gauge chart from Google is because it is just something like, how do you say it in English?
Shades of the color.
Shades, yeah, exactly. The shades. So for example, you can say, okay, the background color should be blue, and then it's getting bigger shades when it's getting lower data, smaller data. Okay. So that's, but you cannot say, okay, this area is now green, this area is yellow, and so on. That you can do in the community visualization, but not in the one for now, which Google is offering.
But it seems like one of the changes that will be coming soon.
Maybe one other word to the community visualization. I think the only problem with that is usually also data privacy. I'm not quite sure how the data privacy regulations look if you use those community visualization. That would be a good point to investigate. We normally try to not use it, except if someone really wants that. It's probably better if it's directly from the tool itself.
Yeah, then just quickly to mention, there's a new data source picker, but it's also just a little nice visualization improvement. So for example, if you have, let's say 10 different data sources and you have then a list inside your dashboard, you really don't see which connector you use. So for example, you have a Google Sheet connector, you have a Google Ads connector, you have a BigQuery connector and so on. Before this release, it was not possible to divide it. And now you see then a logo of Google Ads, you see the icon of Google Sheet and of BigQuery and so on.
So now, Ricardo, your biggest improvement on the list.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know that's a personal one.
Maps are nice in dashboards. I think they help people get convinced about the impact that dashboards can have. And for many months, Google Maps was not possible to see in embedded mode. So we like to attach our dashboards to maybe a documentation page or separate modes. And in those modes, it was only possible to have the maps, normal standard geo maps, I think is the name of it. And
which has some shortcomings in terms of features, obviously.
Exactly. And Google Maps allowed you the flexibility of changing the format, changing the styling, making it look nice, fitting the overall design approach.
Zooming in, zooming out. I think geo charts, you can only select Germany, Europe, some regions, but you cannot.
Specific regions. Yeah. And now Google Maps is possible in embedded modes and in any type of view mode that is possible. So that makes us quite happy that we don't. I mean, GeoMaps worked well, but we're all for Google Maps in this part.
So then our last point. That was, I think, one where we're really happy when we read it. But I think it's a little bit clunky or something, not so intuitive. When you try it a little bit more, it's interact with the report in the edit mode. So let's give a quick example. You have a report with one filter, for example. And in the edit mode, so where you can change all of the configurations and so on, you want to change the value of the filter. So you want to filter, for example, for one special value. Before it was needed to go to the view mode, then change it, and then you see how it looks currently. And then you have to go back to the edit mode and change something if you want to change it, and so on. And now it's possible to, in the edit mode, click on the filter and you get the drop down, and then you can select the value. And it's already changing the values and the data in the report. I think it's good that Google is aware of that and that it's improvement. But sometimes you just want to drag the filter somewhere else and then you get a list of the values and so on.
I would like to be able to activate and deactivate this option because it is very useful but just in a very short time period of when you're tinkering with the dashboard to make sure that it's right. But before that and after that, it doesn't make sense to have it, and it's just an extra part. It's like, I think like Alex said, when we read it, we were like, yes, this is going to save us so much time, but then we didn't think of all the other times where it just makes it slower and difficult to manage.
So also if you are changed something so let's say you choose one value in the view mode, and then you go back to the edit mode, the filter value is still they are also in the edit mode. So that's also
good. This helps
also good. Yeah. Just to quickly mention that. I think that's the most important one, especially for Data Studio and for BigQuery. Ricardo, or if you have something more?
No, I would just invite to the people watching, if there are any of the changes that happen in 2021 that you think should also be highlighted, please communicate. There were a lot of changes in both tools this year, and I think we were on top of them as they were happening and also reviewing and commenting between ourselves, but maybe we had a small oversight with them. So yeah, just would be good also to hear.
And I'm also super happy that Google is like doing so much changes still, because with Looker, of course, they have also quite big enterprise tool inside the company. Yeah, it's complete different story to Data Studio, and I'm not only talking about the price, but alone the fact that one is like HTML based and the other is like you build widgets which you can then place next to each other. There are pros and cons for both systems, and super happy that we still see such a big and huge development also Data Studio.
Yeah, so if you want to have some more information for one feature or for one release, then you can for sure check out our Medium blog post. We can also put it in the description of this video on the podcast or whatever. And for sure, if you want detailed information, you can go to the release notes list of Google. They're also attached in our blog post, or you go directly to the documentation and Google for that, for Data Studio BigQuery. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, we can put some links in the description for that, so that it's easier for you to find.
Well, perfect. Yeah.
Cheers.
Bye.